The small, familiar ache of holiday melancholy settled over Sarah like a comfortable but slightly heavy blanket. The air in her apartment smelled of pine and cinnamon, and through the window of her Brooklyn brownstone, the distant, muffled sounds of classic Christmas tunes drifted up from the street. She was hanging a garland, her movements slow and deliberate, but her heart wasn't entirely in the festive cheer. It was the kind of quiet evening that forced reflection, especially when you spent it alone. Her mission this evening was to find the perfect spot for some new LED string lights, a task that required her to venture into the dusty, forgotten corners of her storage closet. Shoving aside old photo albums and mismatched blankets, her hand brushed against something rough and cardboard. She pulled out a small, unassuming box labeled simply, December. The unexpected discovery felt like unearthing a time capsule. This wasn't her usual Christmas box filled with ornaments she'd collected over the years. This was a box she hadn't touched in over 15 years. Her breath caught in her throat. Slowly, carefully, she lifted the lid. Inside, packed loosely between sheets of brittle tissue paper, were small, potent artifacts of a forgotten age. There was a faded handwritten postcard showing a lighthouse covered in snow, dated December 24th. There was a single, slightly crushed peppermint candy cane, its vibrant red now a pale, dusty pink. And resting on top of a cluster of tarnished tinsel was a small, crudely carved wooden ornament, a tiny lopsided sled. Seeing the sled triggered a powerful, poignant flashback. A younger Sarah, 22 and reckless, was standing on a frozen hill under a huge, silent moon. Beside her was Liam, his breath clouding in the icy air, his hands red from carving the very sled she now held. They had spent that Christmas break at a remote cabin, attempting to build their own ornaments without buying anything new. Liam, the mysterious figure of her past love. He was an aspiring architect then, full of passionate, impossible dreams that seemed too big for the small town they both grew up in. They were fire and ice, perfectly balanced. They were inseparable until the moment life demanded they choose separate directions. Liam chasing a scholarship to Europe, Sarah staying behind to care for her ailing father. It was an amicable, necessary ending, but one that left a permanent, invisible scar. They had promised to meet every Christmas Eve at the town's ice rink, a hopeful, naive pact. But after the first misty year, silence had settled between them like a heavy snowdrift, and the promise was buried. Sarah gently lifted the lopsided sled. She remembered Liam's determined frustration when the wood wouldn't cooperate and the quiet, fierce pride in his eyes when he finally presented it to her. It was a symbol of their philosophy back then. Create, don't consume. Experience, don't just observe. As she sifted through the box's contents, she found another, more heartbreaking clue, an airline ticket stub from Zurich to Boston, dated 3 years after they broke up. It was unused. A wave of understanding and intense, agonizing regret washed over her. He had tried. He had kept their promise, or at least he'd intended to. He had been ready to come back, but she had been too deeply entrenched in her responsibilities, too afraid to risk the pain of another goodbye to respond to his letters. She had extinguished the flame herself, believing it was the only way to protect her heart from being broken a second time. She realized now, holding these relics, that she hadn't just lost a boyfriend. She had lost the version of herself who dared to believe in reckless, passionate love. The version of herself that would choose a lopsided handmade sled over a perfect store-bought one every time. Driven by an impulse she hadn't felt in years, Sarah pulled out her laptop, her heart pounding a frantic, hopeful rhythm. With trembling fingers, she typed his name, Liam Beckett. The search results returned a familiar face, but one refined by time and success. His smile lines were deeper, his gaze more serious, but it was him. Liam was now a renowned, award-winning architect based in Switzerland, known for his groundbreaking work and sustainable, community-focused design. He was successful, brilliant, and it seemed utterly unreachable. Her brief flicker of hope began to dim. But then an article caught her eye. A headline that made her heart stop. Liam Beckett returns. Home to oversee Stowe Rink Restoration Project. Stowe, the tiny New England town where they grew up. The town where their Christmas Eve promise was made, right at that very ice rink. The next morning, Sarah canceled her entire schedule. She packed one small bag, slipped the little wooden sled into her coat pocket, and drove 6 hours north to Stowe. It wasn't a calculated plan. It wasn't about stalking him or trying to force a reunion. It felt more like a pilgrimage, a mission to honor the ghost of a promise she had broken, and perhaps to say goodbye to the past properly. The town was exactly as she remembered, Snow-laden, cozy, and impossibly charming. Wreaths hung on every door and the air smelled of wood smoke. She walked straight to the old town square, her boots crunching in the fresh snow. The familiar, battered ice rink was indeed surrounded by scaffolding and construction barriers. And there he was. She found Liam there, not in a crisp suit, but in a heavy, familiar plaid coat, arguing good-naturedly with the foreman about drain pipes. He looked up, a casual glance across the construction site, and his eyes still that warm honey color widened in immediate recognition. The moment stretched, silent and potent, erasing 15 years in a single glance. The world around them seemed to fall away. He walked toward her, his expression a complex mix of surprise, disbelief, and a deep, lingering sadness she recognized because she felt it too. "Sarah," he said, his voice husky, breaking the spell. "I thought you hated small towns." "I miss the smell of wood smoke and honest work," she replied, her hand tightening around the sled in her pocket, a small anchor in this overwhelming moment. "And I thought you hated coming back to what you left behind." "I only left to bring something worthy back," he countered, a statement that spoke volumes about his success and his enduring respect for the life they once shared. They spent the next few hours simply walking, retracing the familiar paths of their youth. They didn't talk about their careers or their successful adult lives. Instead, they talked about the ghosts of Christmas past, about the people they were and the dreams they had. He confessed that he had tried to keep the promise, flying to Boston that year, but had lost his courage at the last minute, terrified she would reject the dreamer he still was. She confessed that her fear had built an invisible wall around her, blocking out his letters, and any attempts he made to reconnect, believing it was easier to be numb than to feel the loss. As dusk fell on Christmas Eve, they found themselves standing by the old frozen ice rink. The restoration was almost complete. The lights were strong, casting a magical soft glow over the pristine ice. Liam reached out, and this time, there was no hesitation. "I never stopped loving the girl who would rather build a lopsided sled than buy a perfect one, Sarah." Her eyes welled with tears. She reached into her pocket, pulling out the small wooden sled, its crudely carved shape a testament to their imperfect, genuine love. "I kept it," she whispered. He took the sled, turning it over in his hands, his own eyes misting slightly. He didn't ask for a second chance. He didn't need to. He just reached for her hand and led her onto the empty, newly restored ice. They skated slowly, awkwardly at first, their movements rusty and unsure after so many years. But soon the old easy rhythm returned. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more content.